All right, how is everyone doing? We are in our final wrap up of our tech days. I'd like to thank all of you for attending. This is now our 12th annual tech days and our second virtual tech days. We've had 3 days of excellent sessions. I do want to remind you all that the recordings of all of these sessions are intended to be up on the Tech Days website until next April. So if you did miss a key session because life happens as you were going through your week here, you will have the opportunity to get back out there and check out those recordings, and the pre-recorded sessions are out there as well. So make sure you take a look when you are able. Lots of great information on the Tech Days site, so please use that as a resource year round. Okay, this is an exciting time. Here we are. We are wrapping up this Tech Days event. This would not have been possible without our sponsors who make these community events possible. And so at this point, I would like to recognize all of the sponsors who made this happen. Our annual and premier sponsors are Nusenda Credit Union, Adobe, and Dell. Thank you all very much for your continued support of all of our programs. The specific event sponsors for this Tech Days event is A&M, Aruba, Sharewell, Epson, Microsoft, NEC, NetApp, Palo Alto, and SKC Communications. Thank you all for investing in this opportunity for us to collaborate with our community as well. We also have with us today a very special participant in some of our Tech Days sessions. Karina Branson of Cover Sketch Graphic Recording and Facilitation is here. There are some tips in the chat if you would like to see how to review the doodles that Karina is doing. That's going to sort of do a picture of what we are talking about here today. And you can see that live and in person as it's being created. And at the very end of today's session, we're going to give Karina a little bit of time just to do a quick narration and overview. So you will be able to see how things were captured during this event. And Karina's sharing some information in the chat as well. All right, I would like to thank the Tech Days team for this incredibly successful event. We've had a lot of folks prepare presentations, a lot of folks behind the scenes making this happen. I want to specifically call out Alex Rosner, Deirdre Markham, Elaine Rising, Ellie Kane, Kim Wasetta, and Marth Bechtel for their huge role in preparing for our Tech Days event. And with all of that, we're going to go ahead and get started. The way that this session is going to be organized is I'm going to do a year in review, talk about the impact of the pandemic and how it has helped us to transform as an institution. Once I've completed that, Alex is going to enable microphones, and we're going to ask that folks share contributions, ask questions, and we'll have a dialogue for the remainder of the session. And then, as mentioned, we'll go ahead and stop the session in that regards, and we're going to be able to see the great work of Karina in how she has captured our discussion here today. All right. So with that, let's get rolling. In addition to thanking you all for your attendance, I would like to congratulate you for not just surviving, but thriving during a very difficult and unprecedented time. And I'm not talking about your attendance here at Tech Days. I'm talking about what we have all been through for the last little over a year now at this point in time. I think many of you will recall Spring Break 2020 in the same way that I do. Our students left to go on spring break to take a little vacation, and we were already in the conversations about what was going to happen upon return from spring break. Well, in that 1 week time while the students were out, our lives were going to be totally transformed. And we as an institution, we're going to totally flip our delivery model. Many of you are familiar with the way things used to be, where we worked from work. We all had that corporate building, that institutional building that we'd go into. There was a lot of structure. People had their offices. You could network in the hallways. A lot of personal collisions were happening, building a lot of social capital as you worked with individuals in the organization face to face. Our offices were busy places, lots of noise surrounding us as our colleagues did their job and we did ours. If we needed to get hold of someone, sometimes we could just pop up over that cubicle, walk down the hall, whatever we needed to do to interact and get things done. We all had our professional identity and our personal identity, and sometimes they overlapped, but we went to work and we went home to have our home life. Well, that transformed in that short period of time, right? And we all got used to this work from home modality. And the interesting thing about work from home is, yeah, we were doing our jobs from our houses, but rather than working from home, many people categorize this as living at work, because what we were really doing is we were trying to balance our personal and professional lives in a way that we had never had to do before. And there were confusing lines, barriers. When did I start work? When did I stop work? Meetings could often overlap the normal work day. And we were so accessible because we were easy to get hold of. Everyone was online doing their thing. So there were a lot of new challenges that were introduced. Workspace challenges. How do I take my living room and make it an office? Do I have the appropriate furnishings? I've got kids at home or pets at home. Lots of craziness happening in those spaces because public schools were also had gone remote. And so it was no longer a situation where the kids went off to school, the adults went off to work. Now everyone was in the same environment, vying for bandwidth within the household, looking for space where you could have that quiet area to focus on work. How do we do all that? How do we manage all of that? The other issue that we had, which has pros and cons, is with that barrier from your professional life and your home life removed, we got to know each other on very different levels. When somebody was sitting in a meeting with their dog hopping up on their lap, or the kids talking in the background. I think I heard several meetings that I was in where kids were playing musical instruments as they were practicing for school. We got to know each other in new and different ways. Artwork that would be behind you. Different aspects of where you were at. I really appreciated the opportunity to really get to know people I was working with on a more personal level. So where do we go from here? Well, that's where we're going to wrap up this session, but let's talk about how we got here. So on that fateful day where it was determined that we were going to make a transition, we were able to really come together as a community and overcome many obstacles. And many of the approaches that we took really leveraged technology. Now, here's the beautiful thing, folks. We had all been working together to set up this foundation of technology for so many years. So while it was a lot of activity to transition for increased usage, for new uses that we hadn't necessarily thought of, we were prepared. We had the foundation in place and we were ready to respond to the needs. I have never been so proud to be a part of the University of New Mexico as I was this past year in our response to this pandemic. It is the people of this place that make this such a great place to learn, to work, and to do our research. Speaking of people, I'm specifically and in particular proud of the folks at UNMIT who made all of these adjustments for themselves and also enabled the entire university, students, faculty, and staff to make those adjustments as well. With the already tremendous workload that was on the plate of these technologists, They were able to respond to all of these emerging service needs. And they didn't just respond in getting it done, they responded with enthusiasm and agility to make things happen. We've all heard about the new normal. I've just talked a little bit about that transition. Well, I think we all are starting to realize that many of the advances that we have made over this past year to put us in a place where we could continue to deliver our service and our education, many of those things are here to stay. They may be leveraged in slightly different ways, but we're never going to go back to exactly the way that things were. And that is an exciting opportunity for each and every one of us. So I have so many things to talk about in regards to this past year. I'm really going to focus on some of the highlights, some of the major transition points that we made in how we all responded together to enable a new education environment. I have to start with Tech Days of last year. Our team had a very short turnaround time to decide if we're going to cancel the event or pick it right up in a virtual setting and keep it moving forward. We all felt that it was really important that we embrace the new environment and we share information with folks leveraging technology. And so from that Tech Days event to this one here, I think we can all agree that we have come a long way and we are continuing to embrace that technology 1 year later. Now, let's talk about our institution. Historically, the education model, we took an over 100-year model of primary on-campus administration and education to a virtually complete home work and learn model. Just like that, we made the switch. Every academic technology system that we had in play, usage skyrocketed, as did the demand for new IT applications and support. To make all of this work, our university came together with heroic efforts to bridge the gap between what our systems were able to do previously and what they needed to do in the future. I think we have all become experts with web conferencing technology, whether it's Teams, Zoom, or any other variety of web conferencing technology out there. It became our normal. We all excelled in that. To give you an example of the growth, Zoom usage at our institution surged from approximately 7,000 meetings in the entire fiscal year of 19 to over 32,000 meetings in the first 2 weeks of the fall semester of 2020. Talk about growth, talk about expansion, talk about embracing what we need to do to continue to work. So much work has happened to make our technologies work better together. Zoom has been integrated with Learn for a more seamless experience as we're delivering education. Many of our support processes and documentation, videos, etc., have been created and put online and altered to meet the emerging needs. We've worked together to reimagine how to continue business as usual in a new way, leveraging many of our technologies to reimagine how university events and activities can take place. We're here to serve our students. How did we make that jump so quickly? Well, it involved working hand in hand with our faculty and our students alike to enable continued education in a remote environment. This deals with so many aspects, making sure that the technology is in place, that the understanding of how to use that technology is there. Connectivity has to be set up so that people can access the resources that we have. But there's also the human factor. How do we foster a continued relationship with our students, making sure that they're doing okay, that they are adjusting to this new normal? One of the things that was put into play to handle that aspect was the faculty early alerts system, giving faculty members an opportunity to share information with advisors and others when there were concerns about our students. Two major offices, Global Education, dealing with all of our international students, and our Center for Academic Program Support, our CAPS group that provides tutoring services to our students. They needed a new way to deliver those services, and we responded by partnering with them to transform those services into online availability. How do we make sure that our students didn't get lost in the shuffle? Well, we created, in partnership with others, a student faculty facilitation network to help students report and resolve issues that they were having. We set up quickly a checkout program to allow students in need to come get a device so that they could connect. And not only the laptop to be able to do so, but we also deployed smartphones with hotspot capability to these students so that they could access their courses remotely. Many of these programs were augmented at the college level with institutional checkouts being handled centrally, as well as college level checkouts being handled in a coordinated fashion to make sure that everyone had the devices that they needed. We partnered with the city of Albuquerque in their Wi-Fi on Wheels program pretty early on, enabling parking lots to be used for K through 20 students to be able to pull up, download an assignment, upload an assignment, and make sure they were staying current with their work. We expanded upon that at the University of New Mexico by actually turning some of our parking lots into high-speed access points, accommodating over 400 cars in 3 parking lots strategically located across campus. This higher bandwidth capability that UNM could provide allowed not only our students, but also K-12 students to pull in and not just upload, download assignments, but also participate in online lectures. That responsiveness provided new opportunities and opened doors for our community. We created a virtual desktop infrastructure library of key software titles that students used to access in the labs, and they now needed to access remotely, thereby enabling them to leverage whatever device they had to use the compute power that the university had to run these programs without having those additional costs. For our workforce, how did we enable the staff to ensure that they could continue to support this environment? Well, the first thing we had to do is ensure we had secure access to certain systems. So we quickly scaled our virtual private network tools to provide for additional capacity for individuals that were working remotely. How did we continue to operate the business of the university that was so heavily dependent on signatures, approvals, paper routing of documents? Well, we had already staged an Adobe agreement where we were able to quickly deploy Adobe Sign for many, many new use cases. Talk about a thing that we never want to go back to. Who wants to go back to the paper pushing? Now that we can route these documents electronically and get signatures and approvals, we are able to greatly reduce the amount of time that it is taking in order to get some of these actions complete. Amazing progress, and we were ready to make it happen. How did we enable all of our support services to work remotely? Well, our UNMIT service desk, as a huge example, quickly transitioned to remote service using soft phones to be able to handle the calls to 277-5757 from virtually anywhere. We assisted many other groups with the ability to answer calls remotely, including student health, enrollment services, UNM ticketing, parking and transportation, continuing education, and many, many others to be able to access and continue to provide support remotely. We did have some on-site presence that never completely went away, and we had to respond and enable that as well. We established numerous COVID screening and tracking tools to gather information for our healthcare professionals and those making decisions about what would open and what needed to be closed. We had tracking systems for buildings where there were possible exposures so that notifications could go out to close certain facilities. For services that remained open on campus, we helped to enable a check-in system where the Lobo card could be swiped, people could access, and we would have a history if there was any issue and we needed to reach out to folks. We didn't completely shut down all of our labs. Many of you are familiar that Dane Smith Hall remained open throughout the pandemic, providing classroom space for instructors to deliver a remote course using technology and tools that we had in place. A lab remained open so that students who had no other means of gaining access, doing assignments, they would be able to do so. And that, of course, was the point where we did the checkout program that I had mentioned previously. Amazing, amazing work. Numerous other applications were developed, travel registration systems, event registration systems, so that we could handle the needs that were out there. We truly are a city within a city, and we didn't stop there. We have many organizations that rely on sales in order to stay open. And without having their physical doors opened, how did they accomplish this? Tamarind is an example. We worked with Tamarind to create an online mechanism for them to share works and sell works. That was enabled that in a way that helped them to get through the pandemic. Many of you heard about our first responders that were still needing to work, and guess what? Childcare was closed. Well, we helped the children's campus modify their registration and billing system so that first responders could use that facility as it was opened for that specific purpose. We worked directly with a number of state entities, including the Department of Health, providing support for their COVID hotline, helping the New Mexico Poison Center, including routing overflow calls during this very difficult time when people had lots of questions on over to the National Guard. There is so much that was happening. Many of these things are going to stay in play. To wrap this up and then open it up for questions, I'd just like to point out that all of these things occurred business as usual in a new fashion, whilst we continued to make improvements in other areas. We've all seen the rise in ransomware and cybercrime. It was critical that our university take a stand to help mitigate these issues. During this pandemic, we implemented an institution-wide multi-factor authentication strategy that is now protecting many of our services, including email, which is a very vulnerable entry point for those with malicious intent. Having that second factor in front of that service and others is significantly improving the security of our environment. We completed an RFP for a new learning management system. We provided Adobe Creative Cloud tools to all of our faculty, students, and staff that need them. We launched an online software store, enabling our community to be able to go get the software they need in a convenient way at low cost or no cost. We rolled out a new open enrollment benefits system in partnership with HR to simplify that process. We upgraded our internal training system in partnership with the hospital, Learning Central for employees. And we completed what is arguably the most complex and significant ERP system upgrades of Banner, all during this time frame. As we move forward, we're going to change the way that we do business once again. But everything I've talked about, that foundation that we've laid, is there and available. You might have noticed that there is a process for telecommute and remote work that is being rolled out over the summer here, a formal process with the experience that we have gained through the pandemic to allow some aspects of those different remote agreements, telecommuting and remote, to continue on a go forward basis. As that happens, we have to rethink how we engage in meetings like this one. We've all mastered our web conferencing technologies. We're all here, we're participating, we're having good information sharing. We're going to open it up to Q&A in just a second, and you're going to be able to interact in that fashion. Well, we're all in our own environment. What happens when we are 50% in one room and 50% remote? That is the next turning point for how we address the embracing of technology and the change that we've seen from the pandemic. So I hope that I've been able to paint a picture of the amazing progress that we as an institution have made. You know, IT is people, process, technology, and data. It's the people that made it happen. The technology and the process are key to making it work well. With that, I'm going to ask Alex to go ahead and open up mics. We do have someone monitoring chat, so if you have anything in the chat, feel free to post there, and feel free to jump in with any comments, questions. If you'd like to start a rumor, I'd be happy to help flame the fire, and I'll help you start that rumor.
I think Marcus has a question.
Marcus, okay, no session would be complete without saying you're on mute.
Yeah, okay. All right. So please consider this question a lob. But one of the things that makes us different from other places to work is the issue of academic freedom. I'm just curious, do you or anyone have a story about the issue of academic freedom coming up in the midst of all of the rest of the technical chaos? Thank you.
All right, fantastic question. Is Elisha online with me?
I don't think Elisha's here.
No, Elisha.
No, Elisha.
So Marcus, I don't have a specific example that I can speak to related to a concern that may have come forward on academic freedom. If anyone would have that, and if anyone else wants to jump in, let me pause for a second before I finish my statement. Okay, so I don't have an example of that. I think all of us worked really hard together to try and make a bad situation tenable. I'm certain that issues came up, Marcus, but none of them rose to my attention. And I'm just so pleased at how people worked together to solve problems. Looks like Greg Gomez has a question in chat. Do you anticipate that IT's successes will result in increased funding in the future? I love that question, Greg. I wouldn't be the relentless optimist that I am often labeled being if I didn't answer yes to that question, that I do anticipate that IT's successes provide venues, avenues for increased funding in the future. The nice thing about my answer to that one, Greg, is we've already seen it in some places. IT technology has obviously been in the spotlight in this recent year, and services that were stood up previously that maybe needed to be modified have been leveraged more and more. The bond funding, the capital funding that we have received because it was prioritized at the institutional level has been unprecedented in the last couple of years. We have started a workstation refresh program that is centrally funded that was continued into fiscal year 22. There are other examples of visibility and funding coming towards our services. Another example is the learning management system. There was an increase in funding to be able to provide the new learning management system. So yes, increased visibility of the benefits of technology services, good communication and transparency, and an open governance and advisory process that allow us to get the right input from the right people really does pave a path for making good decisions on where to invest financial resources. So I am optimistic. I'm happy to go to the chat questions. Does anyone else want to do a verbal? As much as I enjoy talking to myself. Okay, please consider jumping in with your question verbally. I'll go to Damien next. Are there any new opportunities for effectiveness and efficiency? Damien, every day. Every day we are doing our best to work across lines to eliminate redundancy and to leverage expertise wherever possible. That's not an overnight process. I think we've worked together as an IT organization and as a university for the last 5 years with that goal specifically in mind. And yes, we are continuing to see improvements in that area from a licensing perspective, from the use of our data center, to the current discussion on the table is Linux support and how we work together better to deliver Linux support to all the different areas, significant research areas, but other areas as well that use Linux. And there are models unfolding in that regard as well. Someone want to jump in with a verbal? I'm not going to convince you, am I?
I had a follow-up on my question. How about FTEs?
Yeah, Greg.
How about FTEs?
So FTEs, there aren't any institutionally funded new FTEs in play at the moment, Greg. One of the things that we're working as an IT leadership team to do is, as we have turnover, we're constantly rethinking how we staff and where we staff. So there are always discussions around that, and we have made some adjustments in this past year. But in terms of institutional funding of new FTEs, there is nothing on the table right now. We are having some leadership conversations about areas of focus where we want to tee up requests in the next budget cycle. And those are still in a fairly early stage, but yes, we will be teeing up resource requests, including FTEs, in some key strategic areas.
Sweet, thank you.
Cool. Gabe has a question about IT strategy to handle the additional workload that comes from digitizing paper processes or processes traditionally handled in a non-digital manner. So Gabe, really good question. And, whether we're talking about digitizing paper processes, the significant increase in web conferencing, the significant increase in any number of areas, that is always a management challenge. As mentioned, there was a lot of foundational work that was done, but that didn't make it easy to make that jump. And I think we're going to continue to see increased usage of technology. So, in some ways, your question goes hand in hand with Greg's. In other ways, the response to that goes with my answer to the previous question, which is, it is a combination of really looking at the portfolio, evaluating where we need to be spending our time, identifying strategic areas where resource augmentation would be extremely valuable, and teeing those up to the right audiences, rethinking services, and we've done some of this, but I don't think we've done enough of this, rethinking services that we're providing that perhaps are lower priority than other services. We do it on a regular basis in terms of where we spend our time and attention, but we don't do it enough in terms of determining which services we should discontinue. And so those conversations will be ongoing. it's really cool to see the doodle work happening in the background here. I've got my screen sized enough that I can't really see the detail, but I know amazing things are happening there. I look forward to the review. What other comments or thoughts or questions do you all have?
I have a question, Duane. Do you anticipate that there'll be enough people able to go fully remote to actually consolidate office space so you and MIT could save, a good amount of money?
So was that Robert?
Yes.
Okay. Robert, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. So the UNM policy and procedure surrounding the revised telecommuting and remote process is unfolding as we speak. And UNMIT is, as you probably are aware, a part of the pilot to provide feedback on the process. So I say that to demonstrate that it is a work in progress. And much like we had to dynamically respond to a lot of things over the last year, I think this is one that's going to be informed and evolve. But I'm glad you asked the question, and I want to speak to the specifics of what you've asked. In the procedures that are being rolled out, obviously we need to make sure that service needs are being met. And that is a key focus of every area on campus is we have services to provide and we need to make sure that we can provide them. Our ability to do telecommuting work will be heavily dependent on our ability to execute quality services. Now, we have already demonstrated that we are extremely capable of delivering high quality services through telecommuting. And I expect as an IT organization that we're going to leverage that heavily where we can. So we're going through that planning process now to see where it makes sense, where we can do it, how we handle those things on campus that need to have a physical presence when there are faculty, staff, and students on campus. So there are variations that have to occur. So we're going to be dynamically going through that process as we speak. There are conversations about facilities on campus, and is there a potential impact on square footage that is needed depending on how things unfold in the future. So that analysis is happening. Within UNMIT in particular, we did recently relocate our service desk. And I'm going to use this as the example when you're asking, do we have the ability to leverage less space in some cases because of telecommuting work? The UNM hospital tower is being built right over the physics and astronomy building that had the customer support group located right there. If you've driven down Lomas lately, you will notice that our facility is no longer there. At our last staff meeting, we had a quick walkthrough of the UNMIT building, and that is the new location of our service desk. When we built the service desk in that building, we did not have enough space to house all of the staff and students to be there at the same time. We made a strategic decision to build out that space in a way that would leverage rotation for people that needed to be on site and allow for people to work through telecommuting. So yes, we have an interest in doing so, and we're going to continue to look at that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got to get caught up on a few here. Damien, where do we see that we can leverage current technologies to provide more standardized deployment of services through automation, i.e. DevOps? So Damien, that is an ongoing discussion. We are building out DevOps as we can, but as you can imagine, that through the pandemic, some things did get slowed down, some things had resource shifts, but we are making progress in that arena. I don't see that Alicia is on, so maybe we can do a deeper dive there, Damien, at a future IT staff meeting. Lisa, Nikki and Taos, will Branch be included in utilizing TargetX in the near future? So Lisa, thank you for that. Although you say Nikki and Taos, so Lisa or Nikki. Thank you for your question there. As you're probably aware, there are a lot of conversations happening at the institutional level around customer relationship management systems, whether it be TargetX or another system and solution. We are in conversation with enrollment management about their TargetX deployment. We are in conversation with TargetX directly about different deployment strategies that work with their solution. There is an upcoming meeting this week where we will be getting some additional details, but those conversations are happening. We know that there's a high need, not just at the branch locations, but also amongst colleges and schools across the institution for customer relationship management solutions. We are engaging with all parties, including the incumbent vendor, to see what options we have. It is our intent to work together to deliver CRM solutions where needed, but we're still in the discovery process. Absolutely. Okay, we do have a few more minutes for questions or comments before we turn it over to take a look at how these doodle sessions have gone. Keep in mind, as you raise your next question, you're going to be immortalized in the drawings associated with this discussion.
Hey, Duane, it's Sterling.
Hey, Sterling. Yeah.
I've got a question. I remember, like, back in 2018 or 2017, there was some kind of, I remember seeing graphics like roadmap to 2020, and it was some of the initiatives that I can't remember if this was an IT thing or if it was a university thing, but I was curious if there's been any discussion about upcoming initiatives for, like, 2025, the things that we're hoping to achieve or move toward. Curious if you had been part of any of those discussions at a leadership level, or if you're aware of any of the those higher level items that we're hoping to achieve in the future that will potentially impact us in IT.
Yeah, Sterling, great question. So there's a few things to sort of unpack that. At the institution level, I think many of you are aware that the strategic planning, the 2040 planning has just been launched with some initial outreach to campus for engagement as that moves forward. So, while we have our near-term roadmaps within IT that we work with our advisory boards on and our IT governance council on, there will be the opportunity to fold these in at the strategic level with the 2040 institutional planning. So I definitely anticipate working together with the leadership at UNM to ensure that we have the appropriate technology roadmap that aligns. So it's our efforts continue, and as you're aware, we leverage our My IT dashboard heavily for our initiatives. But yes, the alignment will continue. I did recently participate with our research advisory board for IT in the creation of an IT research strategic plan that is still in draft mode, but is being reviewed. And, same intent of what you are describing, which is how do we ensure that we have the right technology to support our research endeavors. That is what needs to continue across all of our advisory boards and at the institution level.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Duane. Duane, I hope your Yoda lamp makes it into the drawing somehow.
And is that an actual incisor on your picture there, Duane?
An actual incisor. Which chili pepper are we looking at?
The upper right-hand corner. So you've got a headset on and it looks like one tooth, or maybe that's the microphone. I'm not sure.
Oh, I think that's just the microphone. Too funny. I thought you were referring to the smiling teeth of my chili peppers. All right. Well, I would like to thank you all again, not just for attending this session, but for the tremendous work. I know that we've got some folks here from IT, some folks from colleges and schools, branch campuses, our health science center, and other areas of our university. I would really like to thank you all for what you have done to help our institution move forward during these really unprecedented times. You've helped to lay a foundation that not only got us through the pandemic, but is going to carry us forward to be the flagship institution that we are in the state of New Mexico. We are going to continue to build on that which we have learned, as we always do here at the university. And it is just such a pleasure to work in an environment that has so much creativity, innovation, and teamwork. Y'all are an amazing group of people. I appreciate the opportunity to work with each and every one of you. And I would like to now provide this opportunity, if she is ready, for Karina to give us an overview of the doodle sketch.
Great, thanks so much, Duane, and everyone for the day. I'm going to start here with what we just heard, and then work backwards from the other sessions that I got to be a part of today. So just to reiterate here, what you're seeing, wow, what a year it has been. And to celebrate that despite the challenges, UNM had a plan, and the IT and tech team really stepped up to the challenge. Not to say that it was easy, but with the brilliant minds all working together, you were able to support not only the students, which is of course the mission, but really faculty, staff, and everybody on university to help them be able to feel a little bit more confident managing the situation that was a pandemic. How strange it was to have students go on spring break and then never come back for a while. Well, they did eventually come back, but not come back for a while. Thinking about what work was like before and now. I love that the frame of living at work rather than work from home, living at work, and navigating how to figure out, family and bandwidth and spaces, and really framing the silver linings of getting to know each other in a more personal way than we would, whether it's pets or kids popping in or asking questions about artwork on the wall, getting to build those connections. And then going just absolutely above and beyond with supporting faculty and staff, not only with technological hardware and software, but with childcare on campus for first responders, and creating spaces to teach and develop professionally. And then the parking lot, Wi-Fi and bandwidth opportunities for K through 20 students who may not have the connectivity at home. Checking out devices, and mental health support, which is, where your students aren't just learners, they're whole humans. So we don't know what the future will hold, obviously, but we do know that it's ever evolving, and that this team can continue to work together and communicate and figure out how to continue supporting the university. So just a second, and we'll zip over to Women in Tech, a fantastic panel just before this, facilitated by Kristen Martinez, Desiree Aguilar, and Alicia Torres, and a really phenomenal panel of women and lots of wisdom here, that we know that there are fewer women represented in tech. That's not new, especially minority women. And so how we heard how the WIT team and group organization is really supporting women, empowering women, and lifting everybody up. So we heard stories of journeys in tech and how people maybe felt always technologically inclined, or through a circuitous path found their way to tech jobs, and navigating the challenges of balancing family and figuring out what career they really wanted to pursue, getting good advice from people like family members and each other, and really leaning on other people in your community to be strong, even if you feel intimidated, and overcome barriers like finding a good mentor who has values that match yours, finding your community, even if you are feeling like an outsider as a woman in tech, and thinking about, okay, if I'm my own biggest critic, how can I manage that? How do I create a space around me that feels really inclusive and supportive, and I can be my whole self with? We talked about work-life balance, again, especially in COVID. And some people say, hey, you know, depending on your job and whether or not you're a contractor or an employee working in the healthcare industry, it's easy to be able to draw the line. And maybe it's hard, but figuring out ways to balance, because you work so you can have a great life, not just to work. It's important to know you don't always have to say yes, and it's okay to work hard. It's okay to take time off, and it's okay to feel things, especially in a year like we just had. Some amazing resources shared. And finally, last but certainly not least, we started off this morning with this panel from Dell talking about campus cybersecurity trends and challenges. So on the left, you see tons and tons of things are always emerging and shifting and changing. Phishing to fileless non-malware attacks, where older antivirus software doesn't support or doesn't work with that, to ransomware, to identity management as students move through the university and beyond. And feeling like, okay, that's great, but I'm already so busy as it is. So what can we do so to help cultivate more of a peace of mind? So Dell and their partners and collaborators have a suite of services and experts to help. And I think the major takeaway is there were tons and tons of examples like Carbon Black, NIST, and MITRE, but really thinking about being proactive, getting ahead of threats, and also not feeling like you have to know everything. So figuring out who the experts are that can support you, or what your knowledge gaps are, and then seeking out that support, because it's impossible to know everything. So really knowing that not only does Dell have services, but really there are people who can talk to you and help you solve the problem that you're facing. Let's see, some words of wisdom at the very end, recommendations. Get help from outside experts to fill those knowledge gaps, like I just mentioned. Practice aggregation of data and create potentially a security committee. So it's not just one person feeling like they have to do everything. And then develop top-down practices for the entire system so that it is clearly communicated throughout everything, and every piece talks to each other. So just a phenomenal day, tons of knowledge in the past 3 hours, And I'd want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to listen and visually capture what we were talking about. And I know that the Tech Days team will be sharing these out afterwards. So fear not, you will see a less pixelated version in the future.
Thank you so much, Karina, for all your work today. That was a lot of artistic and brain power on your part. It was very fascinating, and we really appreciate that you were here today.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. Just a virtual round of applause for Karina, please. And I don't think we have our things active, so we'll do that. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I hope that you got a lot out of Tech Days. Again, thanks to the team that put it on and to the sponsors that allowed for it to happen. Super excited about where we are at and how we have responded and what our future holds. Look forward to everyone having a great summer and a great return in the fall to our fall semester. Everyone, please take care and make sure that you take time to take care of yourselves. Thanks.